Hey guys, another video for the Buying a House in Japan playlist. Some of you are already familiar with this project. The mission is to turn this from a office, storeroom, art gallery, whatever else it is, into a room that a person would be happy to sleep in. So the last work that was done to this room was probably about 40 years ago or more. Put that horrible cladding on the walls and those horrible things up in the corner. That's phone connection and internet connection there in the corner. We don't want to move it, we want to keep it there because we might want to use a computer in this room in the future. Floor's dodgy, the ply is starting to separate, so there's a few places where it's a bit soft. It's not weak enough to go through. We've been testing it out with a 100-kilo fat man walking on it every day, and it's not weak enough to go through it. It's just a bit bouncy. And that horrible ply, or fake wood, whatever it is. So, into it. Got the unskilled labourer on the job. Usually in the morning and at night, before and after work. We had the unskilled labourer working in his free time, every moment of his free time, every day. So, first mission was to remove everything that was removable, except the air conditioner. You'll notice the air conditioner working away there in the background. It's been about 34 degrees and about 75% humidity, so we really wanted to try and keep the aircon going as much as possible in that little room. So, obviously in the old house nothing is square. So what we're doing here is drawing a line directly in line with that horrible corner thing. We're going to remove that. Some of you already know this story. We're going to remove that horrible corner thing, but we found we couldn't because there's nothing above it. So we've got to keep it. The ceiling stops just where it overlaps, so we couldn't remove it. So what we're doing here is directly in line. So vertical's not going to work because nothing's vertical or square, but directly in line with that horrible laminated whatever it is. We're drawing a line on the ceiling all the way around. We found once we got up there too, there's big gaps between there and up into the roof. So there's dust and mouse poos and all sorts of stuff up there. So absolutely horrible. And heat. The heat coming from that gap at the top of the wall is absolutely horrible. So it's obviously been affecting the temperature in that room when we weren't even aware of it. Because we just thought that just went up and sort of there was a space up there and that the ceiling went all the way across, and it doesn't. So at some stage this room was bigger, and then they've taken a metre or so to put the toilet. Some of you might have seen the toilet. The toilet room's really long and narrow, the toilet at the end of it. So it's just all horrible. Funny thing they did there, and just put that partition wall up, built the toilet room. Originally the toilet was outside. We've still got the outside toilet as well at the farmhouse, but at some stage they've put the toilet inside. So probably 30, 40 years ago, judging by the decor. The style of it is definitely 30, 40 years ago, isn't it? Or more. So the top of that wall there, it's plastic. There's a little plastic edging that goes along the top that holds the top of that sheeting onto the frame. And it's in the way. Need to get rid of that. And then we're drawing that same thing in line with the top of the wall. So we're using flat piece of metal that we know is straight and using that to put a line across the ceiling. Strange stuff. The materials are all odd. It's strange flimsy plastic that's holding it on at the top, but didn't want to come off. So vacuum cleaner and crowbar. And off to Cairns. We went to Cairns, we went to the home centre at least once a day, every day for a month. Almost, probably not every day, but most days we went to the home centre. So this time was to get caulking and screws But just about every day we went there for something. Sometimes we went there twice. So we've got a plan. We need screws for the plan. They're the ones we needed. And a couple of drill bits the same size as well. Because that cornice thing is made of some weird material that we don't trust. A lot of these materials that we just don't trust them. They're sort of not very secure in place. They sort of move. So the idea is to, the things that are staying, we're going to screw them all in place and nail them all in place and secure everything to make everything stronger and more permanent before doing anything else. So this is the structural work first. So pretty good home centre. The home centres in Japan are pretty good. The prices are pretty cheap. But as we talked about before, we get a bit frustrated with the quality of the materials. So I mean, that stuff's good. Caulking and screws and stuff's good. The wood, the wood. Pine. Seems like it's 5 minutes old. Very new pine. So this is the first step. So directly in line with the wall, just putting a piece across. And again, nothing's square forever when we're doing jobs around this house. You always got to modify whatever you're doing because nothing's square. So keeping things in line seems to be the answer. If you try and do things square, it just doesn't work and ends up making everything else look dodgy. But if you keep everything in line, it seems to work pretty well. So same thing all the way around. So that corner thing, that cornice thing is pretty dodgy. It's sort of made of some sort of laminated something. So we're doing a good job. Again, that the ceiling is a bit thin and goes up into some thin wood above, so nice long screws going through everything. Figuring that the end of this project, everything will be stronger, is the theory. So I've got it all the way around. Again, this is compromises. It wasn't our first plan. And then thin pine. What was it? It was about 7 mil or something. So it's pretty thin and light, which is sort of what we wanted. And then lots of screws. Because it is thin, we don't want it warping or anything. So lots of screws. Battery drill. What a great invention that is. Brant. Battery drill with a clutch. What a thing. Bert. Idiot proof. Once you set the clutch to the right setting, once the screw gets to a certain depth and the pressure, back pressure on it, a certain pressure, it just stops. Brant. Brilliant thing. All the way around. And again, nothing was square, so I wanted to keep it straight with the wall. And then the corners are always tricky because nothing's quite square, so you've got to sort of fiddle around with it, make everything so it sort of matches up pretty well. Mark it without a square, just mark it so it fits. See, yeah, that worked. Brant. It's night time there, you can see it's dark outside, and the next day. So you'll see there will be jumps here, you'll see changes in clothes and things are the hint. That works too. Sometimes you put something up and it's not quite, doesn't quite match up or doesn't quite line up. Turn it around the other way. And sometimes it does, because it's not quite square or something else isn't quite square. Seems to work. Worth a try. Brant. That actually worked really well at the top of that wall. There's no gap at all because it was in line with the wall. There's no gap at all. It sat really nicely. In fairness to the guys, they used some pretty dodgy materials when they built this house, but they did a really good job. We're always finding that whenever we do work on the house, the work that they've done was all good quality, even though the materials were a little bit odd sometimes. So there we are. There we are, all the way around. Yeah, it made a difference to the temperature in that room straight away. We never realised how much heat was coming in through the ceiling until we got that sealed up, and geez, it made a difference. And night time again, see? Right, so see this corner and the where that matches there, where that joins, this laminated whatever it is. So there's 2 screws there we put in there a few years ago because it was sort of hanging down a bit, and that corner thing, you can see it's coming away, it's glued on. They glued it on. In fairness to them, it's lasted 30 or 40 years, but we don't trust it. We don't want to paint everything and then have anything dropping down later. So the plan is to go around and drill holes, because we don't want to just try and push screws through. So drill holes all the way around on that corner, on the cornice, whatever that metal corner is, and put screws in all the way around. You see it comes away. Once we pulled on it, it was actually coming away. So right, screws all the way around holding it in place, and then that laminate, the horizontal laminate there, same thing. Everywhere it joined, every corner, a couple of screws went in just to hold it in place. So it was all pretty good. It probably would have stayed up there for another 30-40 years without doing that, but just before we paint it, we don't want things moving around after they've been painted. So lots of screws, and the end result should be that the whole deal up there should be more secure than it was, more solid. Because the plan is to paint it white, and those of you who have painted things like this white before would know that any little space, any little crack or gap at all stands out. So we've got that done. That's caulking, and we've used this caulking before, and it's pretty good stuff. So 3 bottles of that. Actually bought 3 bottles of it, only used 1. So a little bit of a pat on the back to the fat man. Must have done a reasonable good job of that woodwork, because wasn't as much caulking required as we thought. However, obviously the corners don't quite match perfectly because everything's not square, and then all sorts of corners and funny bits around the place too. There's little gaps and cracks, and where the screws went into, wanted to cover the screw holes. So there's the caulking done all the way around. Dries really quick, couple of, maybe not even an hour or 2, it's dry enough to sand. So just hit it with the sandpaper just to sort of smooth it up a bit. Oh, this is the experiment, guys. Remember, some of you know about this already. We experimented with that stuff on the wall. We put 2 layers of paint on it and just scratched it with a fingernail. It just came straight off. I was like, oh no, we can't do that. We can't do that. That's not going to work. Oh no. So we did actually ask opinions at about the same time as we found this out. We asked opinions from people. What do you think's a good thing to do? Everybody sort of said what we've been sort of thinking, that it's going to need some sanding and some sort of sealer or undercoat to stop that happening, because we can't have that. It's going to be a kid's room, so it's going to get scratched, right? So sanding time. So this is a clever little thing, little sanding block thing with an adjustable handle. It's about $3 or $4 or something. This was a horrible job. This took 3 days. So a few hours in the morning and a few hours at night. A bit of an experiment here with a hand drill, battery drill, just to see if we could use a spinning wire brush in the corner just to do the corners, but no, it wasn't very good. We often experiment. You don't get to see it always in these videos, but we often experiment with things like that. It did work, but it was just too slow. Just not enough of that brush. Getting the wall wasn't worth it. So back to doing this. It was horrible. It was 3 days, a few hours in the morning, a few hours at night. Just a horrible, horrible job. Anyone who's done a lot of sanding like that will know. Your arms ache, you know. Do the right arm for a while, left arm, both arms, trying to share the workload a bit, and just wanted to do a good job because didn't want to do all this work and then at the end of it have the paint peel off. So we were well aware that we had to do a good job of it. So into it. Harsh. That was horrible. The worst part of this project, that will be the part of this project that is remembered, is the sanding. It was a nightmare. So you're watching this at 12 times speed, remember, so it wasn't quite as fast as this. So while doing the sanding, one of the benefits of doing it by hand, anywhere that was a bit loose, that needed a nail, soon became obvious. So inside that wall is mud and bamboo, but there are wooden frames around the place. You've got to find the wooden frame to put the nail in, because putting the nail through that into mud isn't going to do you any good at all, really. Not much. So around the bottom there was a wood frame that the guys had used when they put that stuff up. So that's happening. So I was kept taking breaks from the sanding to do other things. So this is obviously taping and plasticking up everything. That's the door to the rest of the house, and it was such a messy job that we knew it had to be covered up, because otherwise the whole house would end up with dust. Resiny dust, horrible stuff it was. So I totally sealed that door up. Nothing was going to get through that door. That's that 1/2 mil plastic again too. Right, sealed that up. Got that much wall done. God, it went on and on, that job. It was horrible. Anyway, so that's the TV, cable TV and internet connection over there. Some of you saw the other video we made recently, taking a cable from there up to where the new office is. But we want to keep that there because in the future we'll probably want a computer in this bedroom. So we want to keep it all there but tidy it up because it was just all over the place. So at the moment, putting it all outside there, it's all still connected, it's all powered up, but sort of putting it outside so that it's out of the way a bit. Take down those shelves. It's hot, guys. It's rainy season in Japan. In between the rain, it gets really hot and steamy. So most of the time 75% humidity plus 32 degrees, 33, 34. So it's pretty hot in that room. No breeze. Just went on and on, that sanding. If you think it's painful watching that boring sanding, you should have been doing it. Horrible job. Oh, this is interesting. Noritake. Noritake is the famous porcelain tableware company, famous around the world for the quality of their tableware, and apparently they make sandpaper too, which isn't so odd really, because the ceramic that they use to make the tableware, obviously. So here's step 2 of the experiment. We wanted to find out, we sanded another piece of that fake wood paneling, sanded it to the same sort of level that we sanded inside, and then got this sealer. We just don't trust these things unless we really know them. We don't really know this sealer very well, so okay, got this sealer. It's runny and milky, and we've used something similar to that to seal the mud walls on a previous project, and it worked really well. So I wanted to experiment with it on the wood. So there we are, sanded to the same sort of level that was sanded in the room, and then hit it up with the sealer. So it's sort of a milky sort of look to it, see-through, milky, sort of, just like painting it with milk is what it looked like. And then leaving that to dry, and then back inside again. Oh, there's these things that would have been to hold back curtains originally, and they're sort of dodgy. And the little screws, he'd used dodgy little screws we couldn't get undone, so I had to drill the screws out and then pull them out, sand it off, move on. Oh, back in there, okay, so the sealant's dried, give it a coat of the paint, leave it to dry, don't hit the finger with the hammer. So look at this floor, yeah, it's springy, it's not dangerous, we're not going to go through it, but it's just annoying when you're walking on it that it sort of gives. So it's an opportunity when the room's empty, do something about it. So the X's mark the dodgy squares. Yeah, over near the door, that's really annoying. Every time you walk in the room, doing, little trampoline thing going on. So power saw, the ply is 12 millimeters thick, so power saw set for 13 mil. Post-production sound effects. A few sparks there, there's occasional nail. Okay. Crowbar, smash, smash, pull, pull, smash, smash, pull, pull. Here you go. So, could replace the whole floor, could do that. It'd cost a few $100s and a few more days, but really didn't want to do that. There's no real need. Again, we have to balance the cost and the time with the big picture on this place, because probably 10 years from now we're going to sell, and when we do, chances are, 99% chances, whoever buys it's just going to demolish it and probably build 3 or 4 new houses like we showed you recently. So that's what we need. That's what we need. There's the notes, carpenter's notes on a scrap of wood, and then off to the back room with the power saw. So you've got to balance it. We can't spend too much money or too much time on these jobs, because it's all going to get thrown away eventually. So the plan is just to make the place nice for 10 years. So whatever jobs we do, we want them to last for 10 years, and we want to sort of improve quality of life in the meantime. But we have to remember that it's all going to end up rubbish at the end. Sadly, it's just the reality of it, that this old house is on a huge piece of land. It's actually 5 blocks. So it's inevitable when it's sold that people aren't going to want to live in it. Japanese people don't live in an old house. So here we are, look at this, guys. On the left is the oh no, right? No sealer, no sanding. On the right, sealer and sanding. How's that? Pretty satisfactory, isn't it? That's one coat, one sanding, one coat of sealer, one coat of paint. And the plan for the room is to do 2 coats of paint. So now I'll get more serious with it. And of course, do manage to scratch it, but it still didn't take the paint off. Look at that. It just scratched the paint, didn't take it off. So, right, okay, because we certainly didn't want to do all this work and then at the end of it have the paint peel off. So, having done this experiment, we're confident that, okay, the plan's going to work. Yay. All good. Experiment complete. Project is a go. Green light on the sealant. Sanding's finally finished. Thank God for that. Horrible, horrible, horrible. Oh, right, so it was pretty dusty at the end of all the sanding, of course, so it's a wet rag, just water, wet rag, damp rag, remove all the dust. Oh, that's a 220 volt power outlet, so is that one. So as you know, the voltage in Japan's 110, but they have 220s around the place for air conditioning. So there was two in that room for some strange reason, and neither of them got used when the air conditioner got put in. So basically just taking the outlet off and getting rid of the wire, because nobody uses 220 for anything else, it's only for aircon. So a couple of ugly outlets in the middle of the wall, so removed them. What's going on here? Oh, the caulking. So holes, the little holes around the place too. There used to be a railing running around this room. The old man had a railing. All through the house were little railings for him to hold on to when he walked. That kickboard at the bottom is a funny green, fake marble-y type laminate, which we decided was actually pretty good for a kickboard, so I've just left it and just covered it up with the green tape. That's that tape too, some of you might have seen on the previous job. That sticks. Scientists in Australia often use the term sticks like shit to a blanket, and that kept coming to mind because that is some serious tape. For masking tape usually peels off easily, doesn't it? That stuff just sticks. You've got to be really careful where you put it. It actually did some damage to some wood. Oh, look at this, quite proud of this. Wanted to still be able to access the light switch but not get paint on the light switch. As it turns out, that didn't quite work out. Didn't stand up to the spray gun, as you'll see. So now the sealant, the caulking's pretty well done, so now this is the sealant going up. So just using a little roller, just because there's so many corners, and then across the top there's that little narrow bit, and it seems a bit faffy, bit like faffing, doesn't it? There's a bit of faffing going on there, but it was convenient to use the little one. And the little tray too, you could hold it in your hand up the top of the ladder or wherever, and bang, bang, bang. This wasn't bad. After the pain of the sanding, putting this sealant on with the roller wasn't a painful thing to do at all. It didn't take long. And it did the whole room, did everything. Did the walls, did that horizontal laminate thing, did the wood at the top, did the ceiling, did absolutely everything. The thinking was we didn't trust any of the materials, so we did everything. Oh, I had to take the light down. The light was in the way, so I took that down, and there was an old fluoro light we had that had been taken down previously, so just lay that on the floor to light the place. So everything in the room is now covered in sealant, except the aircon and the floor. Night time again. Take everything. Oh, I had to say goodbye to the air conditioner. That was really sad because it was so hot. But it had to be done because we were about to use the spray gun, so aircon had to be covered up with plastic and taped up. Now this was a mistake. The result of the spray gun was really good. It didn't take long. It only took an hour or so to do the whole room, including the ceiling, and it worked really well. It was really effective. It got in all the corners and all the gaps, which is why we were using it. All the little corners and little gaps and little funny bits worked really well with the spray gun. So it worked really well, and it took really nicely to the sealant. So it was really good, but it was deadly in there. There was just no way to get enough ventilation, and it was misting. The paint was misting really fine. So fine it was coming through the mask and up the nose and down the throat, and it was just horrible. So it was good to have done it, but wouldn't do it again. Wouldn't use the spray gun inside again. It wasn't very good. So the next day now, the first coat that was done with the spray gun has dried, and now the next one's going on with the roller. So far we've done the sanding, we've put the sealant on, we sprayed one coat of paint with the spray gun just to make it take to the sealant, and then this coat's going on with the roller. So that means one coat of sealant, two coats of paint so far. And it worked. The sealant, it was good stuff. You could tell as you're putting the paint on, it was really taking to it. It really was working. On the ceiling too, it was a good idea. Not a very flattering angle, is it? Hello. It was hot. It was stinking, stinking hot. Have a listen to this. Stinking hot it was. Horrible. So then, brush, lots of corners and places like that the roller couldn't get to. Oh, and then on the ceiling too, between the little squares on the ceiling. So I ended up doing the whole ceiling, all the joins between the little squares, all the way around the ceiling. Pretty pedantic, but it's really hard with jobs like this to know exactly how far to go. One of the spectators said, "Don't worry about it, just leave the gaps between the squares, it looks okay, it looks like a design." But no, I had to do that too. So I did the ceiling. All those lines on the ceiling were done with the brush. So now that's the second coat on, isn't it? And it just wasn't looking enough. It just wasn't. It could have been good enough, but it just wasn't quite. So now the ceilings had 3 coats. It had the spray gun and then 2 coats with the roller. And now putting the light back again. Check this out. This is the LED light. We've got really big on these. That used to be a fluoro up there. And a few months ago we replaced it with this. Now, little LED lights, rows and rows of them, boof. And it's got adjustable, the strength, you can adjust the strength with a little remote. That's 100% at the moment. So I wanted to get the ceiling finished and get that light back up again to get the lighting really good for the final coats of paint, because I wanted to be able to see it properly to make sure that we're doing it properly. Again, hard not to be pedantic with these things, isn't it? So it's not bad. Finished around the air conditioner and peeled the plastic off and fired the air conditioner up at the earliest opportunity. Made a big difference to quality of life, that did. So around the window, that was just bare wood before. Ended up doing 3 or 4, 5 coats on the around the window. So yeah, finished all that, and as mentioned before, any little gap at all stood out, because it's also white, isn't it? You know, so any little gaps that hadn't been corked up already stood out. So went round with the corking again. So the plan was, before the final touch-up, go around everywhere with corking, cork everything up. That's good stuff too. The corking was the same colour as the paint, so if we corked something and then didn't paint over it later, it wouldn't matter. And then removed as much of the plastic and the tape as possible, because usually when you remove those, any sort of imperfection or anything, you're going to be able to see it, aren't you? So before the final touch-up, remove all that plastic and tape just to see how it's come up, if there's any things there that need to be touched up a bit. Tidy those cables up in the corner. They're a bit of a pain. There's acres of cables and 2 devices and loads of cables and 2 power supplies, and bit of a pain. But we found a way to mount the devices on the wall and then put conduiting or ducting down the corner, fed as much of that wire as possible back in the ceiling. Mounted the devices up there, curtain rail back on. nails on. Got that corner as tidy as possible for the moment. Oh, that's a little cover, little blank cover to go over the top of that old 220 volt power outlet. And now we've taken all the tape off all the other outlets and light switches and things, just to tidy up around them with the final paint touch up. And then around we go, once around the room, looking for anything that didn't look quite right and just touching it up with the last of the paint. Used, how much paint? 10 litres? 10 litres of paint, plus the sealant. Nice glass, isn't it? There's lots of that in this old house, lots of sort of patterny glass. So the unskilled labourer just whipped up some curtains. No, not really. It was subcontracted, that job. And then tape and plastic off the door. Damp cloth cleaning the floor. And then this stuff, $50 for one of these mats. We've got 2 of them. Of course the room's not square, the mat is square, the room's not square, so a bit of faffing around. So here's our before and after, guys. That's what it looked like before. That's what it looks like now. So we're pretty happy with it. The new occupants are very happy with it. We have to move all the stuff in yet. But yeah, it came off. As with all these jobs, you never end up doing the original plan. You have to keep modifying the plan. There's another curtain coming too. That's obviously just the backing lace, but there's another curtain coming. The floor covering worked well. That's sort of a bit neater than it was, but we're going to do a bit more. There might be a little box in the corner to put the cable in or something, but it's up high, out of the way. No one can touch it up there anyway. That kickboard around the bottom, that worked. Just didn't do anything to it except just didn't paint it. Covered it up with plastic, didn't paint it. That looks alright, doesn't it? So it's probably the longest video I've ever made, guys. It was hours and hours. It was a huge file of hours of video to make this video. Longest one we've ever made. Huge editing job. And it's done. Hope you enjoyed that. More videos coming soon.